What makes an institution great? It begins with a dream and an idea. The idea may be the response to challenge or change. It may be the slow accumulation of questions resolved, leading to a definitive answer. It may be a sudden burst of clarity that sees a solution in an instant. But a good idea without action is like a vehicle without power to move. It idles well, but goes nowhere. So what moves an idea? People with commitment, people with energy and dedication, people with resolve, people with a mission like yours. Let your mind drift back to a more quiet time. The year is 1872. There were no television sets, no movies, not even a radio to intrude upon your senses. The war between the states had ended 7 years ago with Robert E. Lee's surrender to Ulysses S. Grant at Appomattox. Grant was about to begin his second term as President of the United States. In the Midwest, the town of Evansville, population 30,000, sprawled alongside the Ohio River. It was growing slowly, yet fast enough to need new homes, new schools, churches, fire and police protection, and perhaps most of all, a hospital. The nearest one was in Louisville, 120 miles away by horse or carriage, or 200 miles by riverboat. The need for a hospital was just about to be met. This was a 3-story building located on the riverfront between Wabash and 10th Avenues. It was originally the U.S. Marine Hospital, Port of Evansville, built in 1856 for the care and treatment of injured and sick rivermen. The hospital was shut down and sold shortly after the war. Several years later, a group of prominent Evansville citizens repurchased the property and donated it to the Daughters of Charity. The sisters promised to bring much-needed medical care to the area. The sisters had occupied the premises for about 2 weeks and were still cleaning and painting the mostly vacant interior. Now the date is Thursday, July 18, 1872. As it happens, the day before the feast of St. Vincent de Paul, founder of Daughters of Charity. On this date, Ben Shapker, eldest son of Bernard Shapker, a dealer in dry goods and a key planner in getting the Daughters of Charity to Evansville, brought a sick southern stranger traveling upriver from Paducah to the doors of the not-quite-opened hospital. Sister Maria Velker, the hospital's first administrator, came to the door and appraised the condition of the stranger. No doubt about it, the man was sick. He was admitted as the first patient to St. Mary's Hospital. As Sister Maria announced through the Evansville Journal the next day,
"We received our first patient yesterday. The man was a stranger, a very respectable bearing, who while on his way from the south fell ill and came to Mr. Ben Shapker inquiring for the hospital. The sisters were hardly ready, but made room for him and now declare the hospital open for patients."
our mission of service had officially begun. The new hospital did not have an easy financial time. It took about $4,284 a year to maintain the institution. Bed rates in the wards were $5 a week, $7 for a private room, which included the doctor's fee and medicines. Laundry, stimulants, and liquors were extra. Of course, if you had no money, you were still cheerfully admitted and cared for as a charity patient.
The work is never ending. When the sisters are not caring for the ill, they are visiting farms, soliciting food, furniture, or anything else we can use to successfully accomplish our mission. All of us take great pride in our hospital. It is one of the finest and best equipped in the Union. There are accommodations for 100 patients, and beds are almost always full. We do not have an operating room, so we use any convenient room available. We sterilize our linens in the kitchen oven and boil our water on the kitchen stove. Wards are comfortably heated in winter by coal stoves, and there is, thankfully, a bathroom and toilet on each floor. There is no maternity ward because all babies are still delivered at home. We have 3 staff physicians and 3 consulting physicians. There are now 10 sisters to care for and comfort the patients.
The first St. Mary's Hospital served the community for 22 years. Now the aged building was no longer adequate. It was time to build a new hospital. The new hospital wouldn't come easily, but come it did. under the efforts and guidance of St. Mary's new administrator, Sister Mary Agnes Farrell. After property acquisitions, construction began in April 1893 on the second St. Mary's Hospital, located at First Avenue and Columbia. The grand opening was held February 15, 1894. On that day, Sister Superior Loretto, who had succeeded Sister Mary Agnes the year before as administrator, threw open the doors to the new $110,000 hospital. They came by the thousands to see one of the most complete institutions of its kind in the West.
Our new hospital has 150 beds, 25 private rooms, and 24 baths, all with both hot and cold water. Our main operating room is equipped with lights so night surgery is possible. And we now have a separate accident operating room, complete with a cabinet for bandages. There's even a steam-powered elevator. We also now have our very own hospital chapel.
The world was changing forever. A new entertainment called The Peep Show had been invented by Thomas Edison, which was quickly followed by moving pictures. A gasoline-powered engine was being tested, and a revolutionary diagnostic tool called X-rays had been discovered by Röntgen.
Today, St. Mary's celebrated the graduation of our first class of nurses. We are so very proud of their accomplishments.
St. Mary's Second Hospital was to continue the mission of service for 62 eventful years. It served through World War I, then into the Roaring '20s, where, among many other events, women finally were allowed to vote in national elections. Public radio broadcasting began. Band-Aids were invented. A candy bar named Baby Ruth, after President Cleveland's daughter, was introduced. And a baseball player named Babe Ruth was making history with his bat. The 30s brought in the Depression and the rise of fascism. Democracy and capitalism were challenged. Times were tough. The average worker earned less than $1,400 a year. But on the other hand, Pluto was discovered, Twinkies, Snickers, and sliced Wonder Bread appeared, and the Lone Ranger was saving the West. Blood banks began and vitamins went on sale. As the decade ended, Gone with the Wind tore at our hearts, and a man called Hitler began to tear the civilized world apart. The first years of the 40s were the darkest in modern history. America and its allies were at war and losing. But in 1943, the tides began to change. We began to win one victory after another. Finally, in 1945, Germany surrendered, followed 2 months later by Japan. Post-war America was bursting with energy, enthusiasm, and money. As the decade ended, Truman was president, snow fell in San Diego, the minimum wage rose to 75 cents an hour, 8 essential amino acids were described, and people were humming Mona Lisa or Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. What was St. Mary's doing all these years? It was quietly, day after day, serving the community, taking care of the ill and injured, offering help and hope to the poor. In 1916, a new surgical pavilion had been constructed, and in 1922, a 4-story annex was added to enlarge and improve the hospital. During World War II, the hospital participated in the U.S. Cadet Nurse Corps training programs and met the increased demands of other wartime activities. And now the realization was growing that the second St. Mary's was rapidly becoming outmoded and inadequate. If the Daughters of Charity were to continue to expand their long, splendid record of skill, compassion, and devotion to Evansville and the Tri-State, it was time for a new hospital. When Sister Justina Morgan arrived in Evansville and toured the existing facility, she had 2 thoughts in mind: build a new St. Mary's Hospital and provide better patient care. The search for a suitable site began. There were 2 likely choices: a gift plot of 20 acres on the west side of town, or an 80-acre tract on the east side of town. The latter lay between Lincoln and Washington Avenues and was owned by the Evansville State Hospital. After much legal maneuvering, the tract was purchased for $140,000, or $1,750 an acre. Groundbreaking ceremonies were held May 17, 1953, the cornerstone laying ceremony in October. On March 4, 1956, the eagerly awaited 3rd St. Mary's Hospital in Evansville had its dedication day. The beautiful new complex, originally estimated to cost about $4 million, was completed. The actual cost of everything, property, buildings, furnishings, and equipment, ran well over $8 million. But the Daughters of Charity had set another goal, and with the generous help of the people of Evansville and other benefactors, had reached it. Their mission of service, tempered by love and compassion for the sick and poor of all religions and races, would continue.
Yesterday, March 10, 1956, was a great day for everyone involved with St. Mary's. We moved from the old First Avenue facility to our beautiful, grand new St. Mary's Hospital on Washington Avenue, 6.8 miles away. The move began at 7 in the morning, and miracle of miracles, all 97 patients, including a 16-hour-old infant, along with 5,000 pieces of furnishings and equipment, made it without mishap in just 100 minutes. I'm told that more than 800 skilled persons gave their services to St. Mary's. They included nurses, technicians, local and state police, civilian defense, firemen, National Guardsmen, and 400 men of Local 215, Teamsters, chauffeurs, warehousemen, and helpers unions. By dusk, all departments were functioning, including radiology and pathology, and all the patients were snug in their beds without having missed a meal, a hot bath, or a change of linen. I said no mishaps, but I should mention our oldest patient, who is 91 and recovering from a broken hip. He claimed his false teeth were missing. However, his son called today and said that he had taken them home with him before the move so they wouldn't get lost. So, all's well that ends well.
Spectacular as the new hospital was, improvements, expansion, and innovations continued to be the rule at St. Mary's throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s. One notable innovation during the 60s was St. Mary's pioneering work in family-centered maternity care, now emulated in many hospitals across the country. In 1968, St. Mary's accounting went electronic as accounts receivables data was converted into a computer system. Additional conversions of information quickly followed. In 1969, surgical and cardiac intensive care units were added. As Neil Armstrong had slipped silently over the surface of the moon a few months previously, St. Mary's slipped silently into the 70s. In 1970, the Occupational Therapy Department was opened. In 1971, a Department of Radiation Therapy and Nuclear Medicine was established. St. Mary's had been a pioneer in Indiana in this field with the purchase in 1958 of a rotational Cobalt-60 treatment machine. Soon, 1972 rolled around. It was time to celebrate the 100th anniversary of St. Mary's Hospital. It was a time to reflect on the accomplishments of the past, but not for too long. Plans were already in the works for a $7.3 million expansion program. This included expanded or relocated services such as surgery, surgery recovery rooms, surgical intensive care, pathology, central services, purchasing, and more. A major portion of the expansion plans were devoted to outpatient care. In 1975, the Tri-State Renal Center began accepting patients. And in 1978, it was decided that hospital no longer adequately described the breadth and depth of services now offered by St. Mary's. St. Mary's Hospital became St. Mary's Medical Center and proudly displayed their new logo. The 80s were again busy times for St. Mary's. The new South Tower was begun in 1981 and finished 4 years later. In 1983, construction of the first cardiac biplane cath lab of the Tri-State was completed. By 1986, the Tri-State Heart Institute, the region's first, was founded, followed shortly by the formation of Network One, the first cardiac emergency network in the area. By 1988, the healing light of lasers were beginning to be employed by St. Mary's Medical Center in the new Tri-State Laser Center, another first in the area. So far this decade, St. Mary's has opened the first neuroscience center in the Tri-State. The new radiology center is opened, as well as the occupational medicine clinic, designed to meet the unique needs of the business community. The laser center is in expanded new quarters. The main lobby is being remodeled. Services are being consolidated. These are only a few of the many projects ongoing and envisioned for the 90s. And through all the building and moving and shifting, St. Mary's has never lost sight of its pledge and responsibility to care for the poor. In 1990, the Medical Center contributed nearly $3 million and 50,000 man-hours to help the less fortunate in 60 different projects and services in Evansville and around the world. St. Mary's is committed to helping others, always. St. Mary's proud history of service and caring has been shaped by countless thousands of determined men and women who have walked our halls. Without their tireless dedication, our mission could not have met with the success it has. These men and women gave more than their time and skills. They reached deep inside themselves to find the extra effort and commitment it takes to lift a hospital to greatness and to keep it there through time. We will be forever grateful for their service.
Our medical center is made of bricks and mortar, steel and glass. It is equipped with the finest equipment money can buy. But today and tomorrow, as it did back in 1872, it takes the love and dedication of those working inside it, as well as support from the outside, to create a true ministry of which we are the proud heirs. As we face the challenges of the future, and as we empower our partners with the responsibility and resources to meet them, we do so with renewed strength and a solemn vow to perpetuate our mission of service.